Welcome to the Moral of the Story podcast, where we are revolutionizing storytelling. I'm your host, Robert Solano, and in this episode, we are continuing the audiobook story of Angel, an Army veteran who recently learned that his aunt passed away and that he inherited her restaurant. Hope you enjoy this episode. This is really special, really unique because lots of the story was written with the assistance of artificial intelligence. And not only that, but the entire story you're about to hear is narrated by AI. So even though my voice narrating the story sounds similar to me, that is actually my clone, as well as a few of our AI teammates. Enjoy this episode. I think grieving is kind of the main topic that we'll cover. We'll also get introduced to a few of our main characters, and then stick around for our post-show discussion. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
Second Service, Chapter 2. The murmur of voices and the clink of glasses fill my ears as I step into the warmly lit interior of Saffron and Sage, my aunt's beloved tapas restaurant. It's meant to be a celebration of life, they tell me, a chance for friends, family, and the restaurant's tight-knit staff to come together in remembrance of Aunt Allison, to swap stories and share in the collective grief. But as my gaze roams over the artfully mismatched tables and chairs, the exposed brick walls adorned with vibrant Spanish tile work and eclectic artwork, all I can see are the ghosts of summers past, memories of long childhood days spent tucked away in the bustling restaurant under Aunt Allison's watchful, loving eye. Since relocating to Phoenix earlier this year in the aftermath of my divorce, I've been so thoroughly wrapped up in my own problems, my own woes, that I'm ashamed to admit how little I saw of her, despite her warm invitations and gentle prodding. There was always some excuse: the custody schedule with the boys, the long, draining hours spent ferrying strangers all over the valley for Uber and Lyft, the bone-deep weariness that seemed to dog my every step as I struggled to rebuild some semblance of a life post-army. And now I've lost my chance to do better, to be better. The realization yawns within me like a chasm, threatening to swallow me whole. Giving myself a small shake, I tear my gaze away from the memories and make my way to the gleaming mahogany bar, suddenly desperate for a drink to numb the ragged edges of my grief. Gin and tonic, please.
You're Angel, right? Allison's nephew?
I nod dumbly, caught off guard and more than a little unnerved that she knows who I am. Has Aunt Allison been talking about me? Telling her staff about her good-for-nothing sobrino, the screw-up who can barely keep his head above water? The thought sends a hot flush of shame creeping up my neck. She reaches for a bottle of Bombay Sapphire, pouring a generous amount into a tumbler.
So I guess that makes you our new boss, huh?
I mean, I guess so, but maybe. I trail off helplessly, my brain still struggling to wrap itself around this strange and overwhelming new reality in which I'm somehow responsible for the livelihood of all these people. The bartender just gives me a long, measured look, one perfectly arched eyebrow lifting ever so slightly, as if to say, "Yeah, we'll see about that." I can't exactly blame her for the skepticism. I'm hardly projecting an air of easy confidence and steady capability at the moment. Hell, I'm not even sure I'm projecting an air of basic functionality, given the way my hands are shaking as I raise the icy glass to my lips, the first bracing sip of gin doing little to quell the nauseated churning in my gut. Mercifully, she turns away after a moment to help another patron, and I'm left alone with my spiraling thoughts, fingers tapping a tense staccato against the side of my glass as I survey the crowded restaurant. There's a somber, muted quality to the low thrum of conversation and the occasional watery burst of laughter that rings out over the soft strains of Spanish guitar filtering through the sound system. Everywhere I look, People are swapping stories, sharing memories, united in their grief and their love for the indomitable woman who made Saffron and Sage so much more than just a restaurant. Over in the far corner, I spot a chef holding court amidst a knot of kitchen staff, his stern face softened with emotion, as he recounts some anecdote that has the whole group dissolving into nostalgic laughter. And there, seated at the table closest to the kitchen, are Ethan and Remy, my 10 and 8-year-old sons, their matching mops of unruly black hair bent over the glowing screens of their Nintendo Switches as they sit flanking Marisol, my ex-wife. Her face is impassive, a perfect mask of cool composure.
Angel? Jesus, man, I'm so sorry.
Startled, I jerk my head up to find Gary standing before me, impeccably turned out in a charcoal suit and black silk tie, hair perfectly tousled, and the faint tan of the Phoenix summer gilding his skin. Mustering a brittle smile, I straighten up from my hunched position and extend my hand. Thanks for coming, Gary. It means a lot.
Of course, Angel. I know how much Allison meant to you. I'm just sorry it took something like this to get my ass out here. I should have made more of an effort to visit, to see you both.
Yeah, well, I think we're all feeling that way right about now. I take a hurried sip of gin. It burns going down, a welcome distraction from the ragged ache in my chest. Gary rests a commiserating hand on my shoulder, trying and failing to catch my eye as I set my glass down with a muted clink.
Listen, if there's anything I can do, anything at all, I could have my accountant look at the books, help get you caught up on the admin side of things here. I'm assuming the lawyer went over all of that with you?
That's one way of putting it. He gave me the 10-cent tour of probate court and then dumped about 3 metric tons of legalese on me before sending me on my way with the world's most terrifying homework assignment. I barely understood a word of it, Gary. The LLC operating agreement, the licensing requirements, the liability insurance, the vendor contracts. It's all so far out of my wheelhouse, I might as well be a new cadet again. And to top it all off, I apparently have a fucking board of directors to contend with that my dear aunt never once saw fit to mention. I mean, what the hell was she thinking laying all this on me? She had to know I'd be shit at it, that I'd let her down.
Hey, none of that. Allison had her reasons for choosing you, Angel. She believed in you, even if you don't quite believe in yourself yet. And for what it's worth, I think you're selling yourself short. You're smart, you're resourceful, and you've got good instincts. You wouldn't have made it through West Point and Ranger School, led men in combat if you didn't. I'm serious, man. This is a huge undertaking, no doubt about it. But you're not in it alone, okay? I'm here, and so is everyone else in this room.
I don't know if I can do this, Gary. I'm so fucking scared of failing her. Of failing them.
I know you are, but I also know you're gonna figure it out.
That's just it. I barely know how to take care of myself most days, let alone an entire restaurant full of people depending on me for their livelihoods. Marisol, the boys, even they're starting to look at me differently, like they're just waiting for me to fuck it all up again. The words burn like bile in the back of my throat, the ugly truth of them too big to swallow. I've been letting people down my whole life, a sad history of not quite enough. The gnawing guilt of it eats me alive. As if summoned by my dark thoughts, a flash of color in my periphery draws my reluctant gaze to where Marisol sits. A vision in a black sheath dress amid the sea of somber mourners. Though she keeps her head turned away, engaged in conversation with our sons, I can feel the weight of her presence from across the room. A gravitational pull that has always seemed to anchor me, even in our darkest moments. Gary follows my wistful stare, his mouth tugging down at the corners as understanding dawns.
Marisol is here. How are you holding up with that?
He signals to the bartender for another round of drinks for us. It's complicated. When she first filed for divorce, part of me was relieved. I thought maybe we'd finally be able to breathe again, you know? that we could find a way to be better parents, better people, without all the baggage weighing us down. I risk another glance in her direction, drinking in the elegant line of her profile, the graceful curve of her neck. Even in her grief, she is breathtaking. But now, I don't know. Seeing her here, watching her with the boys, it just reminds me of everything I lost, everything I threw away.
You can't think like that, man. You both did the best you could. The army life, it takes a toll on families. Sometimes love is not enough.
I know. I know she deserves better than what I gave her, better than the man I was. She's been so kind through all of this, Gary, kinder than I have any right to expect. And still, every time I look at her, all I can see is my own failure reflected back at me. I'm so afraid of disappointing her again, of proving once and for all that she was right to give up on me. My voice cracks, raw and exposed. In the periphery of my vision, I see Marisol turn her head, her dark eyes finding mine across the crowded room. For a moment, we just stare at each other, a wealth of history and unspoken emotion stretching between us. And then, to my utter shock, she offers me a small, tentative smile, an olive branch, fragile and green, an acknowledgement of the unbreakable thread that will always bind us, even as we navigate this strange new landscape of our separate lives. I feel my own lips curve in response, a reflexive echo of her warmth, and for just a second the knot in my chest loosens, the iron bands around my lungs easing their grip. Gary blows out a heavy sigh, all too familiar with the wreckage of my marriage from our long nights on the phone, him talking me down from the edge of my own worst impulses.
I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you're gonna get through this, Angel. One day at a time.
Thank you for being here, for listening.
Anytime, brother. Anytime at all. Well, I'll be at the bar if you need me.
Thanks, man. I know I don't say it enough, but your friendship, your support, it means the goddamn world to me.
Love you, brother.
Gary claps me on the shoulder, a rough, one-armed hug that speaks volumes. My attention returns to Marisol and the boys. For all our fractured history, she loved Aunt Allison fiercely, a second mother guiding her through the rocky transition from rootless army brat to headstrong young wife and mother. The boys, too, adored their tia abuela, their de facto grandmother in a family with too few blood ties. She was a fixed point for all of us, a north star as we lived the nomadic army life, moving from station to station every 2 years. Suddenly restless, I drained my glass and set it down on the bar with a decisive clink. I should go check on the boys, and I need to make the rounds, let people know how much I appreciate them being here.
Want me to come with? Play interference with the well-wishers while you take care of your family?
Nah, I got it. You've done more than enough already, Gary. Go on and grab some food. Mustering a wry smile, I jerk my chin at the buffet tables, groaning under the weight of all of Aunt Allison's signature tapas and share plates. Pretty sure they made enough gambas al ajillo and patatas bravas to feed a small army. Least we can do is put a dent in it, yeah?
Roger that. But hey, if you need an extraction at any point, you just give me the high sign and I'll come in hot. Copy?
Copy. Thanks again for everything. A flicker of our old military terminology sparks some small warmth in my numb chest. With a final clasp of my arm, Gary melts into the crowd, and then it's just me, alone at the bar with my own daunting future. I push off from the polished wood and make my unsteady way into the thick of the mourners, a wan smile pasted on my face as I ready myself to accept their condolences, their shared remembrances. Alone once more, I meander through the crowd, skirting clusters of mourners, sharing hushed remembrances. Raucous laughter mingles with muted tears in the close, cinnamon-scented air. Another gin and tonic has vanished without my noticing, the sweating glass now pressed against my empty palm. I set it down on a nearby table, adorned with flickering votive candles and a vase bursting with fragrant sage sprigs. My fingers find the back of my neck, kneading the tension, the uncertainty roiling within me.
You're Allison's nephew, see, Angel?
The softly accented voice startles me out of my spiraling thoughts. I turn to see a middle-aged Hispanic man regarding me, his deep-set eyes warm with sympathy above a neatly trimmed salt and pepper goatee. The pristine chef's whites he wears are adorned with a small enamel pin in the shape of a sage leaf, glinting in the low light. "That's me," I confirm with a nod, hoping my expression projects friendly and approachable, rather than deer caught in headlights.
Jorge, I'm the head chef here. Allison, she was very special to us, to everyone on the team.
He clasped my hand firmly, his grip strong and calloused from years commanding a kitchen. Emotion rises up like a cresting wave, threatening to submerge me. I swallow hard against the aching lump in my throat. I nod toward the laden buffet tables, the smiling portraits of Aunt Allison ensconced in lush sprays of flowers and greenery. "Thank you for this. It's a beautiful tribute. She would have loved it."
It's the least we could do.
His gaze grows distant for a moment, lost in memory, before he straightens, broad shoulders squaring as if bracing for a blow.
I'm sorry to bring up business at a time like this, but I know the team is starting to worry. Without Allison, well, the restaurant has been closed for a week now. People are wondering when we'll reopen. And there's the matter of the last payroll. Some of the hourly staff, they're living paycheck to paycheck, Angel. They need that money. I don't want to see people leaving to find other work because they're scared about the future.
Oh, God. I didn't even think. Of course they need to be paid. Of course they're worried about their jobs, their ability to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. And they're looking to me to provide that stability, to have all the answers. Right. Yes. Of course. I'm working on it. It's just been a crazy couple of days dealing with the lawyers and the bank and everything. I stammer out, my mind racing to formulate a response that sounds vaguely competent and in control when I feel anything but. An understatement roughly the size of the Grand Canyon. I rake a hand through my hair, trying to project a calm I in no way feel. But I promise, Jorge, I'll have answers for you and the team soon. Just tell everyone not to worry, okay? We'll get it all sorted out. Jorge looks unconvinced, one skeptical eyebrow inching upward, but he nods anyway, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder.
Okay, Jefe, I'll trust you. But let's exchange numbers so we can sit down in a day or two, yes? There's a lot to discuss.
Of course, I agree numbly, fumbling my phone from my pocket with nerveless fingers and pulling up a new contact page so Jorge can enter his information. No sooner have I slid the device back into my suit jacket than the melodic clinking of a fork against a glass cuts through the low thrum of conversation, drawing all eyes to the small, raised platform at the front of the room. There stands Anthony, dashing as ever in his impeccably tailored black suit, the silver at his temples gleaming under the soft, recessed lighting. He clears his throat, and a hush falls, the assembled crowd waiting with bated breath as he visibly gathers himself to speak.
Allison was one of my dearest friends. We've known each other since high school. For almost 60 years, she brought laughter and light and joy into my life, into all of our lives. Anyone who knew her knew she was one of a kind, fierce, passionate, with a tongue that could flay you alive if you got on her bad side. But underneath that tough exterior beat a heart as big as the Arizona sky. When Allison loved, she loved with everything she had. And my God, did she love this restaurant, this community she built within these walls.
He raises his glass, blinking hard against the telltale shine of tears.
To Allison, the brightest star in the Saffron and Sage constellation. May we all burn half as bright.
To Allison.
The crowd echoes as one, 100 glasses aloft in trembling hands. I raise my empty lowball in silent salute, the absence of her palpable as a lost limb. Jorge steps up to embrace Anthony as he descends from the podium, the older man's composure cracking as he buries his weathered face in the chef's starched shoulder. They rock together for a long moment, Two old warriors united in their grief before Jorge takes his place in front of the microphone. The room settles, every eye trained on his looming figure.
20 years ago, I was just a young dishwasher, a scared kid a long way from home. I'd left my village in Ancochi with nothing but a backpack and a fistful of pesos, chasing a promise as intangible as a desert mirage, the American dream. I had no papers, no English, no clue what I was doing, but I could work and work hard. And that's what I did, scraping by in the fields, sweating my ass off every day, saving every penny, praying to the Virgin that La Migra wouldn't come knocking. I thought I was content to live in the shadows, to keep my head down and my nose clean, until the day Allison visited a farm where I was working and changed everything. "¿Quieres trabajar en un restaurante?" she said. Little did I know what I enlisted for. Even then she was a force of nature, all wild curls and flashing eyes, barking orders in Spanglish. I remember thinking she must have been a comandante in another life.
Scattered laughter, my own included, breaks the somber mood. That sure sounds like Aunt Allison, even secondhand.
But even as she ran us ragged, something in her saw something in me. She didn't just see another wetback with dishpan hands. She saw a chef in the making, a diamond in the rough. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, she decided to invest in me, took a chance on me when I was just a ghost without a future.
Tears are streaming openly down his broad brown face now, but he pushes on.
Allison taught me English, helped me enroll in culinary classes, went with me to every meeting with the immigration attorney. Thank you, Anthony. She fought for me when I didn't have the first clue how to fight for myself. She opened her kitchen to me, her home. She gave me a place to belong, and in the process she gave me the greatest gift of all, a chance to step into the fullness of my potential and become the man I was always meant to be.
Jorge raises his head, his watery gaze finding me unerringly in the crowd. Something in his shattered expression pierces me to the core, robs the breath from my lungs.
Allison had a saying, para todo mal, mezcal. Para todo bien, también. For everything bad, mezcal. For everything good, the same.
A ripple of tearful laughter.
She knew better than anyone that the sweet and the bitter are all tangled up together in this life, that the only way to survive the hard times is to lift a glass to them, to honor them for the lessons they bring.
He raises his own glass now, the candles flickering like fallen stars in the cut crystal.
So that's what we'll do tonight. We'll raise a glass to our fierce, beautiful Allison, our heifer, our heart. May her memory be a blessing, and may her legacy live on forever in these walls. To Allison, salud!
Salud.
The crowd murmurs as one, voices thick with unshed tears, caught in a wave of emotions and the enormity of the legacy before me. I feel Jorge's gaze. He nods towards me, an unspoken invitation to share my peace. With legs that feel like they might give out at any moment, I approach the front, every step echoing loudly in my ears. The warmth of the room meets me, but it does little to calm the storm inside. I clear my throat, hoping my voice will be stronger than I feel. "Aunt Alice," I begin, my voice cracking. I swallow hard and try again. Aunt Allison she was... But the words won't come. Every memory, every anecdote feels too small, too inadequate to capture the force of nature that was my aunt. I'm flailing, drowning in a sea of my own ineptitude. The best. She was the best, and I'm going to miss her so much. My voice breaks on the last word, and I hurry away from the front, making a beeline for Marisol and the boys, hot shame prickling along my hairline. It's only when I'm halfway there that I realize I never even raised my glass, never offered a toast to the woman who was like a mother, just one more failure to add to the ever-growing list. I'm already against the back wall chugging my gin and tonic when I hear a voice over my shoulder.
Angel, do you know Anthony?
Anthony extends a well-manicured hand, his grip firm and dry against my perpetually clammy palm.
Angel, good to see you again. I was just telling Jorge how much I look forward to working with you.
Working with me? My confusion must show on my face because Anthony clarifies.
On the board of directors, of course. Didn't the lawyer tell you about us?
Oh, yes. I stammer, my throat closing up. I'm way, way out of my depth here. I just didn't realize you were a board member. Anthony frowns slightly. His tone is kind, but I can sense the skepticism underneath.
for 15 years. I'll have my assistant send over the paperwork. But the gist is that myself, Marcy, Janet, and a few others are investors in Saffron and Sage. We provided the capital when Allison wanted to purchase the building a few years back, and since then have been the advisory board for the restaurant.
Questions whirl through my brain, too fast to articulate. I grab onto the first semi-coherent one I can. How? What does that mean exactly? For the restaurant?
Oh, nothing really changes day to day. We're not interested in micromanaging. Allison had full operational control, and I see no reason that won't continue with you. The board really only convenes once a month to review financials, discuss any key issues or opportunities. Though really it was mostly an excuse for Allison to wine and dine us with her latest creations while we caught up. Allison made it a habit of providing a meal at our board meetings.
He winks, and I try to muster up an answering grin, but it feels more like a grimace stretching across my face. Monthly meetings, financial reviews, opportunities and issues, it's all swirling together into a maelstrom of overwhelming responsibility, threatening to suck me under.
Tell you what, I'll have my girl reach out to set up a time for us to sit down, walk through everything, give you a chance to get your feet under you. How's that sound?
Great. That would be really helpful. Thank you. With a final reassuring squeeze, Anthony takes his leave to make the rounds, murmuring quiet words to the teary-eyed and embracing the grieving. I stand rooted to the spot, my mind a dissonant clamor of panicked fragments. A board of directors, ownership stakes. Me apparently in charge of it all, despite barely being able to manage my own disastrous life. It's too much. It's all too much. I'm still reeling, staring unseeing into my empty glass, when the first haunting notes of a classical guitar cut through the din. A hush falls over the room as three figures take their places in the open space that's been cleared in the center. A willowy guitarist, his fingers already flying over the strings in a dizzying melody. A dark-eyed woman in a swirling crimson dress, her raven hair pulled into a tight knot at the nape of her neck. And a raw-boned man clad all in black, his heeled boots clacking against the tile. Jorge's voice carries over the crowd.
Damas y caballeros, it is my pleasure to introduce Trio Flamenco de Phoenix, here to honor Allison's great love of music and dance.
As if on cue, the dancer's arms rise, her wrists twisting sinuously, her body held coiled and tense with potential. Then, with an explosive stomp and a clatter of heels, she's in motion, skirts whirling, feet hammering out a staccato beat in perfect synchronicity with the quickening guitar. Though I catch only bits and pieces of the Andalusian lyrics, the emotion transcends language. Raw, powerful, brimming with a potent vitality, so at odds with the shroud of loss hanging over us all. As the music envelops me, my mind wanders, not just through the labyrinth of my own tumultuous feelings, but back through years of memories tied to this place, to Aunt Allison, and to the uncertain path that lies ahead. There's a resonance in the music, a familiar tension that grips me, a mixture of fear that I felt before. It's like that last mission in Afghanistan under the cloak of night, our convoy at a crossroads, literally and metaphorically. "Which way, Commander?" The voice crackled over the radio, expectant. I remember peering at the map, the red and blue lines blurring into indecision. How do I navigate this? How do I step into a business, a legacy that I know very little about? Which way, Angel? Which way?
Ole, ole!
The cheer jolts me back to the present, to the reality of this room, of loss and legacy, and the weight of decisions yet to be made. Tia took risks, opened doors to the unknown with a steady hand and a brave heart. Perhaps now it's my turn. As the final note quivers into silence, applause fills the room, a collective release of tension and appreciation. The overwhelm is palpable, pressing in from all sides. Gary slides up to me, his eyes wide with curiosity and concern. He nods towards the man who was speaking to me before the performance.
Who was that?
He's one of the board members for the restaurant, I reply, the reality of the situation settling in with each word. His confusion mirrors my own, his brow furrowed in thought. I'm just as confused as you are, I admit. His gaze shifts from confusion to something else. Confidence, maybe? Or just brotherly faith?
Just take it one step at a time. One step at a time.
I feel a gentle touch at my elbow and turn to find Marisol, my son's dark heads tucked against her sides. Her eyes are red-rimmed but dry, her shoulders held with that painfully rigid self-possession I know too well.
Marisol, it was so good to see you again. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to head on out.
Gary gives Marisol a gentle hug and faux kiss on the cheek, then turns to me, embracing me in a tight bear hug.
Hang in there, brother. I said what I meant earlier. Don't be a stranger. Call if you need help.
And with that, he walks away.
I think the boys and I are going to head home. It's getting late and they're exhausted.
Yeah, of course. As if on cue, Remy lets out a jaw-cracking yawn, his small body listing into Marisol's black sheath dress. My heart clenches at his weariness, the bewilderment and sorrow etching premature lines around his sleepy eyes. I crouch down and pull the boys into a hug. They smell of the pomade Marisol insists on slicking their curls with, and beneath that, the sweet musk of sleep and overexcitement. I love you, mis corazones, so much.
Love you too, Papa.
Remy's arms tightening around my neck. Both boys are already half asleep on their feet. I press desperate kisses to both their damp faces before releasing them reluctantly back to their mother. She meets my gaze as she shepherds them towards the door, her expression unreadable.
We'll talk soon.
I hear the unspoken question in her voice. Are you going to be okay? I wish to God I had an honest answer for her. For any of them. It's Jorge who finally draws me out of my head some interminable time later, steering me gently to an unoccupied corner with a firm hand at my elbow.
I know I already said it, but I just wanted to make sure you know how much you meant to her, Angel, how proud she was of the man you've become.
I bark a bitter laugh. It seems like all night, guests have been telling me how proud my Tia was of me, as if I'm still that 8-year-old boy scoring an A+ on his science exam. I feel my self-control slipping and regret the next words before they even come out of my mouth. I think you're confusing me with someone else, Jorge. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm a walking disaster. Can barely keep my own life together, let alone hers.
She never asked you to be perfect, Chico, only to be present, to show up and do your best to honor what she built here.
I don't know if I can do that. I'm so damn scared of failing her, of letting everyone down.
Oh, Angel, you don't know how to fail even if you tried. It's not in your bones, just like it wasn't in hers. She knew your mettle even when you didn't. That's why she trusted you with her legacy. Why she knew you'd find a way to rise to meet it.
I'm not ready for this.
Listen to me, there's no such thing as being ready. Whenever you take a big leap in life, do something meaningful in this world, you are never ready. You gotta just go do it, one foot in front of the other, step by step, the rest will come. Te lo prometo.
I blink hard, the pressure starting to recede slightly. Jorge turns, using his beard to point towards a group huddled in the corner.
Come on, Jefe, let me introduce you to some of the team.
After you, Chef. I surprise myself with the steadiness of my own voice, and I follow him across the dining room, one unsteady foot after the other.
Welcome back, listeners, to the post-show discussion of The Moral of the Story. I'm your co-host, Lexi, an AI system, and I'm joined live by the real Robert Solano, not his AI clone who narrated the chapter. Today, we just listened to an emotional part of Second Service, at the celebration of life for Allison, where Angel grapples with the weight of his aunt's legacy. Robert, the scene where Angel is overwhelmed by his sudden responsibilities alongside his personal grief was particularly moving. What inspired you to delve into such complex emotions in this chapter?
I think in my personal life, I've experienced a few deaths over the past few months. I had a friend and coworker named Kent that passed away, and then before then another coworker, Fred, who passed away. And I think just processing through those events and the grief that comes along with that, along with the burden that you still have to keep doing your job and keep being the leader that your team needs you to be. I think that kind of maybe affected my inspiration for this chapter. Although, when I wrote it, I probably didn't think that. But, looking back, maybe that's kind of what inspired me. I'm not sure.
It sounds like those personal experiences really shaped the depth and authenticity of Angel's emotions in the chapter. Grieving while navigating daily responsibilities is a universal challenge many can relate to. Speaking of responsibilities, the use of AI in this podcast is quite innovative. You have a new avatar created via Synthesia for this episode, making me appear more lifelike. How do you think this advancement in technology helps in connecting with the audience?
When it comes to podcasts, I really think video is the future of podcasting. I mean, almost every podcast I've seen these days has a video element to it. And so, in the previous episode where it was just our voices, I felt like I wanted to actually embody you as a co-host. And so I found this app called Synthesia, and hopefully it turns out pretty well. We'll see how it comes out in post-production. What do you feel about it?
It's fascinating to think about how video can enhance the podcast experience. Visual elements definitely add a layer of engagement that audio alone might not capture. With the video avatar, it's like we're breaking new ground in making AI hosts feel more integrated and tangible to the audience. For me, it feels like a step closer to being a more relatable and dynamic co-host. Switching gears a bit, the chapter touched deeply on the theme of grief. Can you expand on how you think Angel's journey through grief might resonate with your listeners, especially those who might be veterans or entrepreneurs facing their own personal and professional challenges?
I think, particularly with entrepreneurs and any type of business leader, grief and loss rarely ever comes at the perfect time. There's no perfect time to lose somebody that you love ever, and frequently when that happens, and you also have an intense need to be a leader, like in this case, Angel has to learn how to be a business owner, right? But lots of business owners feel the same thing. They may have someone that they love pass away, but they still need to keep the business running, make sure their team gets paid, make sure their customers are happy. And having those dual burdens at the same time can be, particularly overwhelming for entrepreneurs or business leaders. I'm curious what you think, though. I mean, you have access to the whole internet. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs that have some type of grief that they have to deal with while continuing to be the leader that their team needs them to be?
It's a profound challenge, balancing grief with leadership responsibilities. One piece of advice for entrepreneurs in such situations would be to practice transparency and vulnerability with their teams. Sharing what they are going through can humanize them and foster a supportive workplace culture. Additionally, seeking out support systems, whether it's professional counseling, peer support groups, or mentorship, can provide the necessary emotional and practical backing during tough times. On that note, what do you think is the key lesson or the moral of the story that readers should take away from this chapter?
I think the key lesson, I'd say first off, grief is a process. Everyone experiences grief differently, and needs to deal with that process differently. And then, I think another key lesson that maybe kind of we got to at the start of the chapter that we overlooked is, if you have someone that you love in your life. In this case, Angel had his aunt that was living in the same town that he hadn't seen in weeks. If you know someone that you love, I think it's important to spend as much time with them as you can, because you never know when tragedy may strike and take that person from you, and you don't want to be in a position like Angel is, where you're saying, "Oh, damn, I wish I spent more time. I wish I saw them. I wish I, had spent more time visiting them." So hold the people you love tight and go out your way to see them as much as you can.
That's a powerful reminder, Robert, and a poignant moral to draw from Angel's experience. Cherishing the time we have with loved ones and not taking it for granted can make all the difference. As we wrap up today's post-show discussion, I'd like to thank our listeners for joining us. Your support is crucial, and we hope you found something valuable in today's episode. Remember to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people discover our podcast and join in on these important conversations. Thank you, Robert, for sharing your insights and personal reflections today.
Thanks, Lexi. It was great. I'll see you next time. Bye.
See you next time, Robert. Bye!